Cimoooooooo! What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. So today I'm bringing to you my top 5 cards coming out of Duel Overload. Duel Overload is one of the most anticipated sets, not only of just this format, but probably of all of 2020, even given the circumstances going on. That might actually prove to be more true than we think, but it's a pretty good set, right? I mean, there's some pretty good reprints in here. We've got some pretty solid Link monsters coming out of Link Variants Pack 1, 2, and 3, and I just kind of wanted to cover what my favorite picks were coming out of the set. If you guys want to see an opening, I already have that up on my channel for you guys, so you can click the card or check down in the description for that video there. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So kicking things off with number 5, I actually have a tie because both of these cards do go together hand in hand, and that is Raid Raptor Ystrix and Cimoooooooo Bird of Sovereignty. So both of these cards, when combined together, do create an infinite loop effect negation combo, and I thought it was worth putting these cards on here because it's very rare that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has infinite effect negation combos, or really infinite anything for that matter, just because we are pretty strict in terms of just any sort of degenerate, well, sometimes, right? I mean, sometimes we do get some degenerate stuff, but we've never really had anything like this before, right? And this is really cool because this infinite effect negation combo is actually somewhat viable, and there are some pretty decent decks that can take advantage of it. Lunalight can play it, Pendulum can play it. There's a few decks out there that can take advantage of it. Obviously, you do have to play a set of cards that could be considered garnets to reduce your overall consistency, but I still think it's pretty cool that a combo like this exists. I actually have a video on my channel showcasing the tutorial, doing it step by step, so you guys can know not only how to use it, but also to play against it to kind of find the choke points depending on what deck that you are playing. But for those reasons, that's why I put both Forstrix as well as Cimoooooooo in the number 5 slot. But coming in at number 4, level 1s will never be the same with the introduction of this new Link monster, Relinquished Anima. So for those of you who don't know, Relinquished Anima is a dark spellcaster Link 1 with an arrow that points up, as a matter of fact, and has an effect that reads as follows. It requires one level 1 monster to make, except a token, and you can target one face-up monster this card points to, equip that face-up monster to this card, maximum of 1. You can only use this effect of Relinquish Anima once per turn. This card gains attack equal to the equipped monsters. So that's a pretty neat effect. I mean, when you look at it in terms of level 1s, the go-to option is typically a card like Linkuriboh, but Relinquished Anima is very unique in that it allows you to have a more proactive approach when you need to link off your Link 1s and do something with them. So for instance, let's say you have something like Thousand Eyes Restrict, right? You go Instant Fusion into Thousand Eyes, take one of your opponent's monsters, you can then link up into Relinquished Anima, which is very fitting considering the cards that you're using, and then if that Relinquished Anima is either pointing to a card in the 2nd or the 4th zone, being in the extra monster zone, then you can absorb that as well. This is also of note that with Master Rule 5 right around the corner, that more players are going to be likely to place their monsters, especially if they're Fusion Synchro or Xyz, in the main monster zone, so they're going to be that much more susceptible to being absorbed by Relinquished Anima. But Thousand Eyes is just one example. You can also take something like Spiral, right? Spiral has Drone, they have Quick Fix, they have a pretty good number of level 1 monsters that you're going to want to use to just link off, maybe if you need to make yourself more zones or get those monsters in the graveyard. Quick Fix maybe just so you can bring him back, so that way you can actually do something with that Link 1 and start to maybe pick apart your opponent's board, rather than Linkuriboh not really doing much of all because it's a very defensive style card. Not that Linkuriboh is a bad card, I just think Relinquish Anima is a lot more offensive and gives you a lot more flexibility in that Link 1 spot. So for those reasons, that's why I gave Relinquish Anima my number 4 spot. Now coming in at number 3, we have a card that could arguably be in the number 1 spot depending on how you want to order things, and it's just that powerful of a card. It's Predaplant Verte Anaconda. So for those of you guys who don't know what this card is, it is a dark plant Link 2 with bottom left and bottom right arrow, so it's already got a lot going for it there, and it requires any 2 monsters to make, and we've seen a lot of cards like that in the past, but let's go ahead and read that effect. So the effect reads, you can target one face-up monster on the field, it becomes dark until the end of this turn, but that's not what we're after here. You can pay 2,000 life points and send one fusion or polymerization, normal or quick play spell from your deck to the graveyard. This effect becomes that spell's effect when that card is activated. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of this turn. You can only use each effect of Predaplant Verte Anaconda once per turn. So there's a lot to talk about here. I mean, if you've already seen in the OCG, this card is pretty much one of the most devastating cards of their format, simply due to the fact that they have Dragoon of Red Eyes legal. Now, obviously, we're not at that point yet, but if Dragoon of Red Eyes is even like teased to be coming out in the TCG, Verte Anaconda is going to get bought out everywhere because that's the main mechanism to access Dragoon of Red Eyes. But even taking Dragoon of Red Eyes out of it, the card is still very good, right? I mean, the fact that you can effectively copy any of your fusion or polymerization based cards in your deck is really powerful. I mean, instant fusion is still a very good card, although it might get limited on the upcoming ban list. I mean, it's still a pretty good card in and of its own right, and the fact that you can take any 2 monsters in your deck and effectively turn it into instant fusion, that seems pretty good. Super polymerization is another big one, so if you're trying to break your opponent's board, you can basically just tutor Super Poly directly out of your deck, so you're already playing 3 copies, right? But if you get 2 monsters to stick, throw down the Anaconda, and then you can use that effect, Super Poly up your opponent's stuff. That seems very, very powerful. There's just so much flexibility and utility that Verte Anaconda provides that, again, it could very well be the #1 card on this list, but I have it lower just because given the circumstances of the TCG, we don't have Dragoon of Red Eyes at the current moment, right? So I think that's definitely one of the main reasons why that card is so powerful. Not to take anything away from it, there's definitely some other decks that are going to benefit, but for those reasons and for the time being, that's why I gave Predaplant Verte Anaconda my #3 spot. But definitely have one on hand for the future. But coming in at #2, oh boy, the hits keep coming because we have one train wreck of a card, and that is Union Carrier. So I've already done an entire video talking about Union Carrier because I just think it is that broken and it is ridiculous. So for those of you who aren't informed though, you can check out the video, but I'll quickly go over the effect once again. Cannot be used as link material the turn it is link summoned. You can target one face-up monster you control, equip one monster to it from your hand or deck with the same original type or attribute. The equipped monster gains 1000 attack. If you equipped it from your deck, you cannot special summon monsters with that equipped card's name for the rest of the turn, and you can only use this effect of Union Carrier once per turn. I also forgot to mention that it requires 2 monsters with the same type or attribute. So it's not completely generic like, say, Predaplant Verte Anaconda, but it's generic enough that it's going to get the job done most of the time. This card is insane. This is effectively like a Link 2 version of Summon Sorceress or like a Link 2 version of Curious, because in either instance, you're more than likely going to be able to get a card to the field that you're going to most likely want to either dump into the graveyard or abuse some busted effect, like in the case of like Dragon Buster, Destruction Sword, Whelp, or whatever the card is, where you can effectively lock your opponent out of their extra deck in an artifact scythe style of way, but permanently. That is just insane. The fact that any dark or dragon based deck now has a permanent scythe lock enabled in their deck just for playing Union Carrier is absurd. But again, it's a way to also tutor other cards to your graveyard, right? Because yes, while you can't use the carrier itself as Link 2 material, you can use everything else, right? So if you equip, like, say, something like Orcus Nightmare to one of your other monsters, if you link that monster off, then Nightmare gets to the grave and you can do a full Orcus combo. That's just barely scratching the surface of what this card allows you to do. There are so many degenerate plays with it. This is a very terrifying card, and again, if you don't already have your hands on one, I would definitely recommend it. For all the cards I'm talking about in this video, by the way, be sure to use my TCG Player affiliate link down in the description to help support the channel. But regardless, Union Carrier, an absolute boss. Definitely pick one up because it is going to change everything. So for those reasons, that's why I gave Union Carrier my #2 spot. Now, before we get to my #1, I did have a couple of honorable mentions. First up is Selene, the Endymion Link monster. This is a very potent card if you're playing any Pendulum-based deck. You're getting the 3 down arrows, which people played Zephyr Metaltron for, or they also played the Dragon Master of Tenyi for, but it also does something for your archetype, right? So that's really cool synergy there. Also, Liv, the World Key Blade Master, very potent card for any World Legacy style decks like Mech Knights, different things like that, allowing you to search for cards in the archetype. It also is able to remove threats. It's only a Link 2 and gives you some pretty decent arrows as well. Very solid card. There's a lot of cards that I probably could have put in that honorable mention, but I didn't want to clutter it too much. But that gets us to our #1 card of Duel Overload, and there's no even questioning this, right? It's Crystron Crystron Halqifibrax. I'm pretty sure the Q is silent. I have no idea. Halqifibrax, I don't know how you say it, but regardless, it's the most broken card in the set. This card is, alongside some of the other cards we talked about in our top 5, are going to warp this game forever. This card is ridiculous. If you don't know the effect, I will go ahead and read it off for you. Crystron Halqifibrax is a water machine Link 2 with bottom left and bottom right arrows, and it requires 2 monsters, including a tuner. Not too difficult, right? It has an effect that reads, if this card is Link summoned, you can special summon 1 level 3 or lower tuner monster from your hand or deck in defense position, but it cannot activate its effects this turn. During your opponent's main phase or battle phase, as a quick effect, you can banish this card you control, special summon 1 tuner synchro monster from your extra deck. This is treated as a synchro summon, and you can only use each effect of Halqifibrax once per turn. So in the first instance, where you're getting to summon something out of your deck for free, remember what I've always said, anytime there's a card that lets you special summon something from your deck, it's probably broken, right? And this card is no exception. You can get the tuner, you can then immediately go into a Link 3, and then you have access to use the effects of pretty much anything else in your graveyard. It just enables like such free link climbing that it's absurd, right? But then you have the second effect to use Crystron Halqifibrax as a defensive card too, because just by incorporating a card like, say, like TG Wonder Magician, which is something they did in the OCG for quite some time, if your board gets disrupted by, say, a hand trap or some interruptive card your opponent may play, then Halqifibrax can actually be used as a defensive option to protect you, assuming you are playing something that he can tag into, to allow you to just stop your opponent from proceeding with their plays too. So at the very least, it's like a defensive card, but in its best case scenario, it's going to help you turbo into some of your strongest plays that your deck is capable of. People are going to start playing packages of tuner monsters specifically to enable this card. It is that good. There's a reason why we did not have this card in the TCG for like 2 years, if not more than that. The card is extremely powerful, and you guys definitely need to watch out for it. So definitively, there is no question that this is the #1 card of Duel Overload. Guys, that's gonna wrap up the video. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. And if you found this video helpful, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member. Just by showing your support in any way that you can, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again. We'll see you next time.